Well, hello, White Sox fans. Welcome to another edition of Future Sox Live. My name is Ian Eskridge. I am joined this evening by the one and only James Fox. How are you, James?
Hey, man. Thanks for joining me again. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's working out well. So the White Sox are showing up to camp with 70 people.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of apartments that they have to rent. So I know Jerry's not happy about it, but your
Well, so,
thoughts?
how many is it usually? Like, I know 70 is a lot, but like
Mid
50?
50s?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
usually.
So usually 50 some. So, like, I kind of wonder how long, like, the prospects are going to be in big league camp. Like, is it just going to be like, okay, yeah, you just like participated, go to the minor league side? Because they have so many veterans in camp and so many guys on NRIs and guys that theoretically have a shot at making the team. Like, I don't know. Like, it's like there's not going to be enough playing time unless they're playing like 3 separate split squads a game, or a day. So I don't know. Like, we'll see. I mean, there's nobody in camp that like is totally like an obvious like go back to the minor league side, right? But I mean, maybe anybody that was a prospect not on the 40, like your Montgomery's, Cannons, those type guys, like maybe they just go back right away. I don't know.
That is a great question. I can't. I mean, it's like there's going to be 15 podcasts by our Chuck about with Hanser Alberto storylines, and I'm not sure if I'm ready for that.
Well, some of the guys that he's going to do podcasts with aren't even like signed in on the team yet. I'm afraid. Like, this is what does this get to? Does it get to 80?
That's what I'm thinking. That was actually one of my first
Yeah.
questions is, are they going to bring in other people? Because at this point, like my brain
Yeah.
might explode if it gets up to like 80. I'll lose my mind.
Well, how many unsigned former Royals are there?
I mean,
Alex Gordon, Lorenzo Cain, like,
Mike Sweeney. I'm
yeah,
sure he's
so
out there somewhere.
I'm sure there's a bunch of bad pitchers. No, I don't know. I mean, look, there's 100 unsigned free agents, right? And they're not all getting big league deals. So, I mean, I kind of feel like, you know, Getz is basically like, screw it. Yeah, you want, like, I mean, the Moustakas thing, like, I guarantee you there's been offer out for a month because they're buddies. Like, hey, if you feel like taking a minor league invite, like, we have room for you. I'm sure he's had that same conversation with lots of people. So
Well, you
yeah,
bring
this
up,
this thing could expand quickly.
yeah. I mean, you bring up Mike Moustakas. We've looked at his numbers, and it's not anything that I would deem impressive by any means. It's not anything that I would even say is remotely even good.
Mhm.
But when you look at Gavin Sheets, who's still on the 40 man, it's an improvement. Unfortunately, I mean, it's a sad state of affairs, but that's
Yeah.
an improvement.
Well, I think he had a league average OPS plus against righties still though, even though he was bad. Like, it was like 105 or something. Um, Sheets had a 61 weighted runs created plus last year, like, which is obviously not going to work. So yeah, like Mike Moustakas, not great. But he's, I hate, like, we do this every week, I feel like, right? But
Yeah.
like he's better than Gavin Sheets is, and like Gavin Sheets has an option. So, I think Mike Moustakas probably makes the team personally. But yeah, I mean, who knows? Like, is he going to find the fountain of youth? I don't know. You'd have to check this because I'm not sure. I heard like he was better in Colorado for sure, but I think he hit more homers for the Angels. Um, and he was with Marcus Timms last year. So
True.
In Anaheim. So
That is a good
I
point.
think he's probably on the team. Now, I will say it's probably the same issue that we talked about with Sheets, right? Like, he should only face righties. But are you ever gonna like play him over Vaughn or Aloy? So is he really a pinch hitter? I don't know. Like, I don't really know how often he'd actually play, but he seems like a more likely option now than Sheets as that fourth bench guy, with an extra infielder, Pilar, and a catcher. So
Yeah,
getting the band back together.
I don't disagree, but it makes me sad. I'm not gonna pull any punches on it. It makes me sad that this is even a conversation to be had that the White Sox are bringing in, and like I said, it's like an entire roster's worth of these guys that they brought in for spring training, and it's pretty overwhelming when you just look, scroll down the names, and there's just so many guys that were, you know, uh, it's
Yeah.
major league esque, with some of these guys are dead,
Well, but I will say I do I like this bullpen approach better than what they've done. I mean,
That's
obviously,
fine.
like
Yeah.
you give like $8 to $9 million to all these guys, and I think all of us kind of complain that you're in your window spending whatever, like 40% of your budget, like on bullpen. This is a way to do it. You just throw 35 guys at the problem to come up with eight, and like this might actually be okay because, in like a best case scenario, some of these guys are really good for a few months and then you spin them off. Like even, you know, like I know we talked to Joe Doyle like this morning on a different show, but I mean, you get a 45 future reliever for a current reliever that's 38 and not going to be on your team next year. I mean, those are deals that you want to make when you're in the White Sox position.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, it's just the whole thing. Yeah, I don't mind the bullpen position either. Just the- to me, it also seems like a good idea, and you know, with the budget, constraints that I'm sure that Getz has been given, this makes the most sense. And I mean, there are some names that are of interest, and there are some that, while they did have off years last year, weren't necessarily aren't lost causes. So, I'm interested to see if Bannister can turn some of these guys around, and maybe working on whether it be pitch shapes or whether it be sequencing. Maybe he comes up with some a better plan for a couple of these guys that makes it so it's useful to have them around, and they excel. I'm hoping.
Yeah, and it does seem like command is like a big like primary focus, which is good. And I don't know that Ethan Katz like wasn't doing that, but I think it's good to have somebody like over Katz because like it's just different, right? Like Katz has like a lot of mouths to feed, and like Katz has to still like try to win that night's game, right? I think that's like part of his gig where I think it's more on Brian Bannister to like win the war theoretically than to win the battle. You know what I mean? So just like some of that stuff. That's why I'm like kind of glad that he's employed. I saw there's multiple articles out on Michael Kopech and the shape that he's in and some of the conversations he's had with Bannister. And obviously turning him around would be like a huge deal. Like, what do you think the benefits of like getting Michael Kopech turned around would be him reaching his potential and like signing here, or him reaching his potential and trading him too, like they've traded everybody else?
Well, I mean, I've heard lots of people that say that they would be upset if there was a quote unquote rebuild, and they were, they kind of tore it down a little bit. I'm not of that mindset necessarily. I would be fine in getting some of the younger guys some playing time at the sacrifice of a win here or there in a what is essentially a lost season. You can call it what you want, but when you win 65 games, it's a lost season. You're really playing for nothing other than pride, and with 65 wins, what kind of pride can you possibly have other than knowing that you have developed some of the guys that you've got to work in late, in next season, So yeah, yeah, the whole thing's just kind of
Yeah.
kind of we'll see. I'm really interested to see how they approach this year, and how we had joked earlier off stream about you know not giving up wins for development. If they're willing to possibly work into that phase a little bit during the year when it's already a it's going to happen that they're going to end up finishing with like 95 losses.
Yeah, I think that was like a play stupid games, win stupid prizes thing. Like it's just,
Possible.
like they look, I'm not I'm actually a little bit optimistic about Getz. But I think the White Sox might have the worst manager in baseball. Like, it's just, I'm not buying, any, like, I mean, of course he wants veterans because he needs somebody to police his clubhouse so he doesn't have to because he can't do it. Like,
Yeah.
this is like a total obvious move. Now, I understand Getz's perspective. I have no money to spend. So, what's the quickest way to be like not horrendous and like ugly at the same time is fix the defense, right? So I completely understand that part of it. But the rest, like I would hope that you're sacrificing wins for development because I think the majority of like a really positive season this year includes you trading multiple players like in season. And that involves like a good year out of Eloy Jimenez, so you spin him somewhere. You multiple like if you get anything for Jimmy Lambert, Tanner Banks, like guys along those lines, like that really pop in a bad bullpen, and you turn them into pieces that can help you later. That's a successful season. I mean, they're not going to win. I mean, whether they win 62 or 72, like you want to know that you have some building block players for like the next few years after this one.
100%. So to go back to the specific Kopech question, I don't know as to whether they'll keep him or trade him. I wouldn't be surprised if they traded him, but I did have a question. So he's coming to camp 20 pounds lighter this year than last year. Now, if you remember when he was a prospect and you saw all these powerlifting videos, the kid was a hoss, kid was thick. And seems like since he's come back from the injury and he's lost some velocity, he's a little less thick. He's a little bit less strong. And, I don't necessarily put too much into the intensity bit of it. But he definitely does seem to be a little bit more calm on his kung fu walkabout here, climbing around in the mountains. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that he needs to get a little bit more, jacked again, or do you think it matters?
I don't know. He needs a third pitch is what he needs. Like, and he needs to fricking throw strikes. I mean, I've pushed against like the move Kopech to the bullpen thing because it's a similar conversation that we have about Garrett Crochet. I don't know that he has the command for the bullpen. I don't know that he has the temperament for the bullpen either. I just like don't know that he's that guy, the guy that you want to rely on 5 times a week or 4 times a week, And like even if he isn't as good as we think and he's just like a number 4 that has no hit stuff like every 6 times out, like that's still more valuable than him being in the bullpen. So that's why I've always kind of pushed against that. I'm curious to see how short the leash is. Like, if it's the same type of crap that we see where he's tipping and, it's like really bad, like do they try to salvage him in like a short relief role? And then you like move him instantly because I have like similar fears where he's like putting him in the bullpen. Like I'm not going to assume that he's going to be like one of the best setup guys in baseball just because you decide to put him in the bullpen. Like it doesn't really work like that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Speaking of guys that have had Tommy John and are on their way back now, Davis Martin is back throwing off the mound. James Fegan was happy to throw out there. Do you think that he's June, July? I mean, do you see him having a spot in the rotation come that time?
I mean, maybe depending on what they do, right? I think it kind of depends on like Cease is likely gone at that point. I would say if everything goes according to plan, like Fetty is probably on the team, but I don't know that Michael Soroka necessarily is. I mean, Soroka's a free agent at the end of the year, correct? Like that's a guy who maybe they'd like to keep, but if he's pretty good, like I mean, we keep talking about trades. I mean, that's what this season's going to be, right? So, yeah, I think Davis Martin could slide into the rotation, or he goes to Charlotte and they take it a little bit easy. But I mean, I think he's a guy that you add to the pile, the Schuster Nastrini eater pile. That's the close to the majors, maybe mid rotation starter guys. But yeah, they won't rush him back, obviously. And his 60-day IL spot, I think, is going to be pretty important here pretty soon too.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that when he comes off of that injury, that's another name you got to snip off the list, and it's getting to be slim pickings. Not necessarily that it's not necessarily guys that are all stars, but we're talking quality depth, pieces that can help the team in one shape or form or another.
Yeah, and I mean, he'd be helpful now. Like if he was totally healthy, he's probably your number 5 starter, and you don't have to deal with Chris Flexen, right? Or one of these other guys. It's just, I heard there was some pushback this week on local like radio shows, just like kind of making fun of the White Sox, which is in vogue. Like that's fine. Like we can do it too. But just like so, they said that like they have 15 starters, which is like having 2 quarterbacks. It means you don't have one. And like, I just like disagree in this instance. Like what are they, like last year they had 6 and we killed them for it. Right now they have 15 and you're going to kill them for it. I mean, they're not good, but like they have a lot of starting pitching options for the first time in a while. And a lot of them are ticketed for Charlotte and some of them are going in the pen. Like there's just like bigger hills to die on. They have a lot bigger issues than having 15 starting pitchers in spring training.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree with that. That this is on the stack of pancakes of things that you are going to complain about with the White Sox. This one is really low on that stack.
Yeah.
So here's a question: is Jared Kelley in the best shape of his life or the greatest shape of his life? I'm going to bring up a picture here so people can see what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There we go. Looking pretty svelte there.
Yeah, I mean, he looks good. It's like, a career kind of flashing before your eyes, maybe, right? I mean, so Jared Kelley was like the top prep pitcher in his class, ranked as high as like 15, I think, on MLB Pipeline pre-draft, and White Sox gave him $3 million. And it wasn't seen as crazy. And like he's struggled, and his conditioning has been an obvious part of those struggles. But, one of the good things about drafting prep players is that they can struggle for years and years and years, and they're still 22 years old. So, Jared Kelley is 22 years old, and he moved to the bullpen last year, and he was fairly effective. So whether he stays in relief or not, I mean, he could have a big league future. Like so we'll see. I mean, we'll see what he looks like. We'll see if they convert him back. My guess is he stays in the pen and they just try to turn him into like a 2-pitch guy, which is interesting because, like he was billed as a 70 grade change guy. Like, are you going to go fastball change out of the pen? I don't know. I haven't really looked at his pitch mix like out of the pen in Birmingham, but yeah, it's just another small thing to follow. Jared Kelley's off of top 30 lists. He's not a guy that's, in the front of like mind right now, but he is a guy that's still in the system that could have some big league upside at some point. And, good for that kid that he, he's looks like he does. And he's, taking some initiative, it seems like, to have the career that he thought he was going to have.
Yeah. From what I noticed last season, he was doing kind of a piggyback role of sorts, kind of how we saw Mason Adams doing with Noah Schultz. Jared Kelley did move around a little bit more. He wasn't doing it for one specific pitcher like Adams was. But yeah, it was definitely more changeup, because that was one of the things, is that his changeup was like pretty much he did have velocity, but his command wasn't as good. His changeup was his major pitch. It looks like the pitch usage of the changeup and slider have gone up in relation to the fastball. I feel like the fastball usage is a little bit down, which is I mean, that may be what's producing the results, but I mean, there's also there's been talk of the not having to start and not having the buildup of anxiety of getting out there on the mound for the first inning is the possibly one of the things that's helped him out in that role coming out of the bullpen like that. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, this is the second year that we've heard that he's in the best shape of his life, and this time looks better than the last time. And the last time I was like, oh, he looks pretty good. This year, real stinking good. So let's hope that gives him a little extra stamina to add some innings there.
Yeah, I mean his like that photo looks like his like stock photo of like when he was drafted. Like, hey, this is this high school kid out of Texas. But I mean, anytime I've seen him, he's he's just been a big kid. Like
Yeah.
like it's like he was getting like Lance Lynn comparisons, and he's in the minor leagues. So and it clearly like affected him. So we'll see how much that changes.
Yeah, speaking of Lance Lynn, I was just going back and watching the U.S. versus Venezuela in the World Baseball Classic earlier today,
Mm-hmm.
and I was pleasantly surprised to watch Lance Lynn just give up bombs. It was pretty funny.
Well, that's when we
Good
all.
reader.
Well, that was like last year in spring training when we all thought that the White Sox were like on the right track. Maybe, yeah, they had this vibrant new manager that was gonna have the team ready to kick your ass at 7-10 every night.
Ugh. I'm gonna move on from that
That's
conversation.
not even one of his like top 5 worst quotes.
Oh no, yeah, 100%.
It's not even close. Yeah.
So I'm gonna in our run list here. I'm gonna skip ahead because it just talked about Venezuela. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring up the White Sox had an international signing the past week, and it was Venezuelan outfielder Christian Gonzalez for $550,000. Do you know anything about him? I've looked. I can't find much of anything.
No, so I'm gonna assume that he hits left-handed because he's writing with his left hand in the photo. So left-handed hitting outfielder, but I will say like 550K is a pretty significant bonus. So like there are other guys, Eduardo Herrera obviously signed for 1.8, and then they signed Profar for 700K. And then the next guy, Primoli, is pretty well regarded, and he's right in there too, 550 or 6. So, these two guys are similar. Definitely like the next two guys in the White Sox class by bonus. And then Orlando Suarez is a guy who was written up as a sleeper by Baseball America. He only signed for 350, but like we've talked about in the past, pitchers are weird. So, he could be really good, So that's their class as of now. I mean, Francis Romero did the reporting on it.
There's another Suarez too, isn't there?
Yeah, he was significantly cheaper. So Joe Angel, I think, Joe Angel.
Yeah. There.
So, Francis also told me that like they're expected to have some Dominican signings, like a handful. So they have 1.8 million right now. Well, does that take up all of it? I don't know. I mean, we'll see. So, they might have some money left, and who knows what they do with it if they do. I'll go on my rant. Like once they have money left, I'll wait and see if they, what they do. I'd like them to spend all of it.
Yeah, that would be a pleasant surprise. So I had a this is kind of a question out of left field, and it's not anything that we've talked about before, but we actually talked about this part of it with Joe Doyle about the White Sox scouting really heavily in Venezuela. Do you think that Ozzie Guillen's championship in the Venezuelan Baseball League and then in the Caribbean Series, do you feel that that's going to have a positive effect towards the White Sox when it comes to recruiting down there in Venezuela?
I think it could. I think it could break ties for sure. I mean, you have to be the highest offer, and the way it goes is like a lot of times, like you sign multiple guys from one trainer, which is like how some of the collusion and the dirty business starts happening, right? Like you get a discount on the top guy because you're willing to sign 5 of his other guys that are never going to be anything, that sort of stuff. And like, I'm not saying the White Sox have taken part in that, but it's been for a long time. I mean, that's what the guy in Atlanta, essentially, Capolella, that's essentially what he was accused of when he had to vacate his whole thing. Is he was getting deals on top guys because he just signed 10 other guys from that trainer, and some of them like had no baseball future at all. So dirty pool down there. But yeah, I mean, like the Sox have been pretty prevalent like in Venezuela the last few years. Like their bigger signings, some of their bigger signings have come out of there. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of surprised this year that their biggest signing came from there, because even last year they had two 700K guys from the Dominican, but Magoyan was their best guy, and he was cheap out of Venezuela, and they offered a
Yeah.
whole. And Venezuelan signings are weird because, like, oftentimes they're not even reported because of how like bad that country is. Like they're literally like afraid for these kids' lives if like it gets reported that they're getting 2 million from a big league team, like their house
Yeah.
could like get raided essentially. So, it's always kind of tough to get like the bonuses from down there. But yeah, no, I mean I know that like Freddie Garcia is like a trainer down there, and the White Sox have, had some other players that are too. I mean, yeah, Ozzie Guillen's a legend down there. So, you would think it could help in some capacity.
Yeah, I couldn't see how certainly couldn't see
Yeah.
how it would hurt.
Yeah.
I was just watching the World Baseball Classic and just looking at that roster and just being like, yeah, it's an all-star team almost, pretty insane. So I'm going to come back stateside here. I wanted to ask you, are you aware that Jonathan Stever is alive?
Yes, he is. Is he 27 now? 26,
Yeah,
27.
he's gotta
So I
be.
know that
Yeah.
I know that he was outrighted last year, and then he was hurt a bunch. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I think I'm guessing that he's gonna be on the Charlotte Knights roster. I With the looks of like what that roster is projected to be with all these young starters, like I would imagine he's probably pitching out of in relief.
That was my thought as well.
Yeah, I'm guessing he's probably a reliever now, and does his fastball slider combo, like, I guess, like get better in relief, because he was pretty good for a while. And then he, injuries kind of derailed him, and command issues and whatnot. So, but yeah, so we'll see. I mean, I think he's going to be another guy on the pile.
Yeah, I totally had the same bullpen thought. The only thing that I worry about is because of the particular injury that he had with the lat area and oblique area, is that, you know, eh, is it going to become a just like a problem that just keeps on reoccurring? And I'm
Yeah.
hoping not. It's like if he ramps up to max velocity, which we haven't seen his White Sox velocity in the minors in years now. So I'm just curious as to whether he can get up there and get back to that velocity without an injury. I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll
like
see.
he was throwing his fastball like up to 97, and he has not done that in
He has
quite some
not.
time. Yeah.
Yep. So I wanted to move into a situation that has been going on for a few years now. And it started after the pandemic issue where they cut uh what is that, the extended season,
Yeah, the full
short,
season.
yeah,
So there's full season rookie ball they got rid
right,
of, but they also got rid of
they
the
got rid of
like
the
rookie
short season.
advanced level.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
yeah,
Great
they got
Falls essentially.
right, yeah, they got rid of the Voyagers and cut ties with them. And now word is coming out that the schedule for the Arizona complex and Florida complex leagues are being modified, and not necessarily a shorter season, but just changing the timeline of it. Your thoughts on how that's going to change development plans for some of these, for the guy. Let's start
Yeah.
with the guys who are already on the team. Let's start with them, as they're the ones who are going to be playing in the complex league this year.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's helpful for your George Wolkows of the world, and your Javier Magoyans and Mogollon. I'm gonna keep saying that wrong.
Yeah.
And Abraham Nunez and all these guys who get to play in real games like right away, basically like by May, their season will start and they'll be playing. The alternative was they would go to extended spring and they'd play on all these backfield games. That didn't count. One other part of that was like if you were playing extended spring games, you did not get paid. Which kind of sucks. And I know this is what the White Sox did with Yoelqui Cespedes years ago, because I don't have to get into the bonus stuff. I know you understand it, but like these guys like aren't getting their full bonuses if they're stateside, like in their signing year. Cespedes was able to come over and play extended spring games because since the games didn't count, it like didn't take his bonus away, whatever. So
Yeah.
so now that's like not a thing. So that's like the front end. Like these guys will get to play on the front end. Their seasonal ends sooner, whatever. Okay. I hated it when I first saw it because it's just another example of like owners trying to cut money for no reason. But I do know that like scouting directors knew that like changes were coming and they preferred this because I guess it's like really hard at the end of the year to like have enough pitching.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Like the end of the year is brutal because like anybody that was really good in the rookie league, you want to get to low A as soon as possible. And then like if you're drafting a ton of college pitchers, like you can't throw them a ton of innings. So I think that's part of the reason. So you're basically flipping it. So the end of the season will be more of like an extended spring training instructs like environment. And the season will still end, I think, right around the same time or earlier. I think it ends like around the draft.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's
it'll
right
be
before, I
done.
think.
Yeah. So then you'll have guys like if George Wolkow is awesome and you feel like 18-year-old George Wolkow's ready, maybe you send him to Kannapolis to finish his season. And if not, he's just doing like an extended instructs like after a full rookie season type thing. So that's the gist of it. It will be a little bit different though, because we might actually have game highlights of super young dudes like right away instead of waiting until that season starts.
Yeah. Again, it's we hardly ever get video of any of those guys anyway.
Right.
When they're in the
Right.
ACL, so it's kind of a bummer.
Well, and the big thing is like the roster too. Like you might know this more than me. Like you could roster, I think 180 guys last year, not counting the DSL. This year it's down even further. It's down to like 165. So I feel like you could have the full season if you didn't have roster restrictions, because you could still take a Seth Keener out of Wake Forest and baby him a little bit if you were allowed to sign 5 guys out of the independent league and just throw them instead. But if you're not allowed to roster that many players, like that's where this like becomes a big time issue. Okay, thank you, Steve Sleepy Harold, our buddy here. So May 4th start, ends July 25th. The draft,
So
I'm thinking the draft is like a couple weeks before that, probably whenever the All-Star break is.
Yeah, I don't even know what the date on it is.
But it's like it'll be
yeah,
mid-July in the teens somewhere. Yeah. So okay. Yeah, so that makes sense. So then anything after July 25th will be instruct. So if the White Sox have a college heavy draft, my guess is the position players go to Canny. And then the pitchers, it's just kind of like a case by case basis. High schoolers will just go play some backfield games. Somebody made a comment from Baseball America, it might have been JJ, that said it was like a tricky league environment. For anybody that doesn't know what that is, like tricky league games take place down in the Dominican at the White Sox affiliate. So like in theory, like the White Sox are allowed to have guys at their complex that are not officially signed by them, that might be 15, that can play in tricky league games, which are just like fake games that go on in backfields in the Dominican Republic. And every team does this and they're just like not publicized, but it's similar. Arizona and Florida will be similar to that, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, that's I mean, when it happens in the Dominican, it's kind of one of those things where I go, okay, yeah, that's to be expected. But now that they're doing it over here,
yeah, they're gonna do
now
it
I
here.
kind of like give it the cock dog
Yeah,
head,
right. Are you gonna ignore this from Clutch Hat Trick or what? Guys, I think we're gonna torture ourselves. I think.
I mean, so that was next on the list
Yeah,
here.
we're gonna be sitting there hoping he falls the whole time, and he's gonna go 1 to Cleveland. So
Probably,
yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
Although I thought Chase Dollander would
I know
end
that's
up
true.
falling to the Sox. He didn't make it that far.
Yeah,
but everybody thought he was going to go number 1. So
yeah.
NCAA baseball started up this past weekend. Did you watch? How much of it did you watch? Did you have any thoughts on some of the performances that you saw?
Yeah, so I have some thoughts. I actually I like I think I would like the players more if I knew the White Sox weren't picking so high, if that makes any sense. So, like, I like a lot of these players, but it's a flawed class, man. It's like,
But at number 5, right?
yeah, there's like all these mashers that are going to be first baseman, and even like Bazana or Weatherholt. Like, I wouldn't be upset, but like, you're taking a second baseman with the 5th pick. I mean, it's just not great. So, for anybody that hasn't really paid attention, there's 2 guys at the very top that are interesting, that are all over your Twitter feeds if you look for them. Travis Bazana is pretty good. I mean, second baseman with power. It's Oregon State for anybody that is gonna like start convulsing at another Oregon State infielder. But and then
Completely
JJ,
different
and then
player, though.
JJ, yeah, and then JJ Weatherholt, and then there's a ton of like serious mashers, but they're gonna end up at first. Like we've talked about Nick Kurtz of Wake Forest. There's what the third baseman at LSU. The name is escaping me right now, but he's Tommy White. Yeah, he's probably going to move to first. And you have Jack Caglianone, who's the two-way guy. That's a first baseman. A guy that was really good today is Charlie Condon of Georgia. Some people think he ends up at first, but he's playing the outfield. But those guys are all top 10 picks. I mean, so it's a very college heavy, but it's not at premium positions.
Yeah, well, what do you think about Vance Honeycutt? Speaking of a premium position, because he does play a very nice center field, and he does have some pop. He's hit a couple of home runs already.
Yeah, so I wish he was left-handed. And it's a lot of strikeouts. We'll have to see. Like at the end of the year, it kind of reminds me of like Judd Fabian, where it's just like super talented, but so many Ks, and you just like shouldn't strike out that often, like in the NCAA. But again, like that's also a guy who can just like figure it out, and he has so many tools that he's like an all-star every year. So it's risky for sure, but we'll see how the season goes. I will say, like, the White Sox, of the teams that are like up there, I mean, Colorado is picking third. They've popped pitchers a lot lately. The White Sox won't be afraid to take a pitcher if like there's a college pitcher that's like the consensus top guy in the class and everybody else goes position player. The White Sox aren't going to be the front office that's like, no, we're not going to take a pitcher that high. They'll definitely do it. So that's one thing that's interesting. Chase Burns obviously has been the best guy, but it's a pretty good college pitching class. So guys will rise up the board. The prep class isn't great. So, it should be a lot of college at the top, and it's early, but I mean, like the prep class isn't that good.
Yeah, that's my fear. That was my fear before the season started. I was worried that the best players in college, the ones who are actually those kind of people that you could dream on and say, "Oh, I could see that guy being up with the White Sox in a year and a half from now and putting up meaningful stats." I feel a little bit less of that because I see that there is some decent college stuff out there. The only question is it going to be a bunch of first basemen?
Right. Yeah. I wish we could take Wyatt Langford. That would be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could just call up Chris Young and maybe he'll deal.
Yeah.
Doubt it.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch of guys that I haven't seen, like the guy that would be the funniest is Mike Sirota, because you've had Mike Sirotka, you've had Michael Soroka, and then you could have Mike Sirota or my Sharona from
he was
from Northeastern.
To the White Sox
he was
last
once,
year,
yeah.
and I was like, oh man, that's terrible.
And he's supposed to be pretty toolsy and interesting, but I don't know. I don't really know anything about him other than that.
Yeah, I don't think where's he at? Like American University?
No, he's at Northeastern.
Northeastern, that's what it was. Yeah, I knew it was some weird like baseball-ish school.
Yeah, he's one of the he's one of the many guys that hasn't transferred. So like Seaver King is like the center fielder for Wake Forest. He was a shortstop for Wingate, and he was so good at Wingate that he's on like the college All-American team. Like he's a stud. But guys have obviously been transferring like crazy. I mean, it's just like college football where guys are like all over the place.
Oh man, do I not want to have that Fields Williams conversation here in the White Sox realm? That would be the worst thing ever. So I'm happy that we don't have to think about that. So I had this just a brief thought here before we wrap things up. I was talking to Elijah yesterday, and I was talking about Chase Burns, and he said, "Yeah, that team's awesome." And then I said, "Yeah, they are, but this amount of transfers should be illegal because every single guy that you see pretty much on that team, was Austin Hawk,
Mm-hmm.
Chase Burns, the other pitcher who I can't think of off the top of my head, also a transfer. It's like all like these guys that are putting up numbers for them.
Yeah.
All of them have transferred in the last year.
Yeah, I think
It's insane.
Massey was theirs, right, originally, or no?
I don't
I don't know,
remember
but
off
then
the top of my head.
Kurtz is their guy for sure. But yeah, no, I mean you just go to baseball factories. I mean they're all kind of doing it. So it's it's definitely fun. Like watching Wake Forest is fun. I have the same reservations about taking like position players from there that are power hitters. I mean, we've seen
Yeah.
it with Gavin Sheets, obviously, and like Nick Kurtz is like a 70 glove at first, so he's going to go pretty high. I hopefully in the top 4 is my hope right now. But you know, we'll see. It's a college baseball. It's pretty fun. Like there's a lot of talent. ESPN Plus has like all the games, so
It's
it's
awesome.
kind of
It's so
interesting.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing on this transfer thing, just real quick. Tommy White, he's at North Carolina State,
For a
which is a
year, yeah.
good baseball school,
Hmm.
and then he moves to LSU.
Right.
It's like
So I
when that
heard
happened,
like I was listening to Carlos Collazo and Ben Badler's show, and they had their Peter Flaherty on, who's like covers this stuff like crazy. He's like
yeah,
one of the best, like doing like the college scene. And I don't know if it was Carlos. I think it's Carlos who, or one of them, like had questions about like what you just said. Like everybody understands like some mid-major stud transferring to get
right,
seen, right?
exactly.
But it's
Yeah,
like when you're transferring from ACC power to ACC power, it's kind of weird, like it's
I
just
just don't get it.
I mean it is like, and I know what we're not doing the football show, like, but I mean it's like quarterbacks transfer every year in college football right now. You can't have like that next guy in line because he needs to go play somewhere. So they're just like all over and they're staying in college till they're 24. Baseball's not like quite like that. Um, but guys do want to go and get seen, and sometimes it backfires. Like last year with Tennessee infielder like Maui Ahuna was
Mm,
supposed to be like a top 10 pick preseason, and he didn't go till like round 4. I mean, he went to Tennessee and he had some issues like getting on the field like because of eligibility or something, and then it just like kind of totally backfired. So, but yeah, like there's more and more guys that like when you start researching this draft that have been at multiple schools, like in 3 years
insane.
before they enter the baseball draft.
So crazy.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else this week?
Yeah, I do. So I want to touch on just like some conversations I've had over on X, which is a dangerous place, obviously, but yeah, exactly. Thanks, Elon. No, just like about like the number of free agents still in baseball and like what is happening now. It's a really bad class of free agents, and it has been. And look, I'm like the last guy that's gonna come on here and like stump for ownership. Um, but I do think like some of the big free agents, like Boris's guys, like I think are incredibly flawed, and they have been this whole time to the point where like if I were Matt Chapman, I would have considered taking the qualifying offer and then going back out next year unencumbered. I mean, he had an OPS under 800, right? Blake Snell won a Cy Young. He's won 2 of them. But like Blake Snell often throws 5 innings. So like if people aren't beating down the door to give Blake Snell $210 million or whatever Boris is asking for, like plus the draft pick that you have to give up, plus the international bonus, but I just like don't think it's as simple and reductive as saying like, oh, owners are colluding and that's why these guys are all free agents. Owners are definitely colluding. Like we can get that straight now. And front offices, we talked about like a little bit pre-show. All these guys are valued the same by every front office. I mean, come on. Like that's a joke. Like if Tim Anderson gets a 1-year, $4 million offer from multiple teams, I mean, what do you think is going on? Right. But I don't think that's what's happening to the Boris 4 right now. I think
Yeah.
we've seen this sometimes where he does this and he tries to drag like an owner into discussions, and they usually, like they usually give in. And it seems like that hasn't happened. Bruce Levine is reported on 670, like that Jed Hoyer has kind of like not allowed that for whatever that means. Like Boris has always done this. You get the owner involved, you go above the GM's head, and all of a sudden Chris Bryant's getting $175 million, you know? And it seems like a guy like Jed Hoyer is, you know, not playing that game. And Cody Bellinger's still a free agent. So we'll see what happens with all these guys. You know, it sucks that like basically like the low middle class like is getting paid no money. I mean, I think we just saw who did the Diamondbacks just sign? You know, the outfielder, the old Angel that you know that went I'd have to look and see. But
I don't
yeah,
even know.
you know, so like he went before Trout in his draft. That's what I always remember about, you know. But they're but these guys are signing for like no money right now. And it sucks, and we're going to see a whole bunch more of them. But I don't think like owners not deciding.
Grichuk.
Yeah, Randall Grichuk. He got $2 million. I mean, that's a bargain for him. I mean, he's not that good, but like that's
He's not
no
that good,
money for a
but
guy
he's
like
not that bad.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's clearly something going on. But these Boris guys are not great, man. They're just not. And I kind of like foresaw this potentially being an issue, especially with qualifying offers involved.
I think teams are also probably saving some money for next year. Number one, and number two, yeah, it's just everybody's valuing these people the same at this point. Is that you look at all these stats and it's just like, yeah, I got it. Yeah, it's you know, I just don't think that you know, you look at these stats and you're like, yeah, he's a decent ball player, but is he $10 million decent ball player?
Right.
You know, it's like I can find a guy that's like roughly around the same talent level for 20%, 25% of the price. So why am I going to shell out the big bucks with I could spend a lot less to get, you know, roughly around the same production?
Yeah, Doug brought up the cable company issues. That's true. I mean, for like a team like Texas, who I think would have no problem bringing back like a Jordan Montgomery, it seems like that's truly affected them. And it seems like a team like Minnesota is affected by that. Clearly, like the Dodgers are not, and the Giants are not, right? And the Giants have been a team that's rumored on all these guys, but the Giants are also like under Farhan Zaidi, not gonna just like go crazy and give Matt Chapman $140 million over 6 years because they feel like they need to. I mean, that's just like not going to happen. So like, you know, this has been presented as a like get back at Scott Boras thing by many. Well, we'll find out next year. When like if Corbin Burns and Juan Soto were free agents, like I'm pretty sure they'd be signed right now. So it's not a Scott Boras is the agent problem. It's a Scott Boras is the agent of these flawed players that want too much money problem.
I think I agree with you that is the problem. One quick thing.
Yeah.
So it was brought up the other day that Rob Manfred is retiring in 2029. How do you feel about that?
So Theo Epstein takes over in 2029? I don't
know. But
yeah.
he's part of an ownership group. So is he gonna do that? You know, I mean, granted the salary's insane. So like I understand, but you know, that guy's made a lot of money as is.
Well, the big so Manfred gets one more CBA then, right? Like So okay. So then that's what he's there for. He'll try to change the game one last time, and then look, we'll see if it's like a Manfred crony or if it's actually, you know, somebody. Who knows, right? Like, will Jerry Reinsdorf be alive when there's a next baseball commissioner? That's what I want to know. But
I mean, I'm not wishing death on anybody, but 5 years is a long time at that age. So who knows?
Will we have a new stadium by then?
Oh yeah.
And will Illinois taxpayers pay for it? Okay, I think it's time to go.
All right, FutureSox.net. You can find all sorts of written content. You can find this podcast. You can also find the recent podcast of prospect Edric Felix, done by our own Elijah Evans. That interview is on there. While you're on there, please stop by and visit our Patreon if you feel like supporting our product. You can find us on Twitter at FutureSox. You can find me. I am Ian Eskridge at Daily White Sox. That is James Fox at James Fox 917. You can find this if you are not watching on YouTube. Know that you can find this on YouTube in video form. You can also find it in audio only form. You can also watch us on Twitch, twitch.tv/FutureSox. There are 2 other streams that happen during the week on this this lovely platform here. We have the FutureSox MLB podcast with Nick Morosky and Danny Miller, and sometimes me, on Tuesday nights, and on Monday nights there is the FutureSox Roundup with Elijah Evans and AAA Jeff Cohen. They talk about mostly minor league guys, and they've been breaking down guys to watch in the system. So you can go back and check out the podcasts if you have not listened to them already. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Ian Eskridge. That's James Fox. You guys have a great night. Thank you. Bye. Mm-mm-mm.